r/ask Reddit, police officers of Reddit, what are you thinking when you see cases like George Floyd? I am a police officer in a medium-sized suburban town in Texas. I have been in law enforcement for 14 years. I love my job, I love how I get to help people, and I love how I get to cause positive changes in people's lives. I love how 99.9% of the time, my badge is shiny. Today my badge is not shiny. I am tired of hearing excuses given by other people for a police officer's misconduct. I am tired of excuses being made for people who tarnish my badge. I am so tired of hearing how officers have a stressful job and their misconduct was a result of that stress. You know who else is under stress? The people who called us, that person whose loved one just committed suicide, the family huggled us because they found grandma dead, and now we're asking everyone questions, the 7 to 11 clerk who just had a gun shoved in his face, and even the guy we just put in handcuffs and told him he is losing his freedom. Sorry, but our stress is low compared to these folks. We might have to go into these s. I don't believe in hiding the misconduct or unlawfulness of other officers, and I have always spoken up. What many forget, standing behind the thin blue line doesn't mean concealing the misconduct of other officers, it means confronting those officers so they don't do something to ruin their lives, the lives of others, or violate the law or code of conduct. It means walking up to the officer with his knee on a suspect's neck and saying, "Dude, this is too much, stop," before the officer commits murder. It means walking up to the officer who has been drinking all night and saying, "Dude, I'll give you a ride home." Instead of hiding misconduct, prevent it, help your fellow officer not do something to ruin his life or another's life. If you do see misconduct, address it, take it to the appropriate level, stop tarnishing my badge. We took an oath to uphold the law, uphold our ethics, and protect our communities. Sometimes that means arresting other police officers or holding them accountable. A patrol unit. Floyd can be seen in a surveillance video falling to the ground next to the unit on the sidewalk side of the unit. Cell phone footage then shows the officer on top of Floyd's neck on the opposite side of the unit, the street side. There is a random man in the background telling Floyd just to get in the car and he can't win. Floyd can be heard saying he knows and he's done. This implies that Floyd may have resisted or attempted to escape, but was still restrained in the handcuffs. Floyd can be heard multiple times saying he can't breathe. The cell phone video shows the officer kneeling on top of Floyd's neck for at least 8 minutes, with around 4 of those minutes with Floyd being unconscious. Even if Floyd did attempt to resist or escape, there was no reason to hold him down for 8 minutes. What was the point of restraining him for so long? Why did the other officer not assist the primary officer with restraining Floyd so they could get him in the patrol unit? Badges of all police officers. Worst of all, this officer tortured his victim for 8 minutes. Imagine your last thoughts and memories being those of a police officer, a person who the public is supposed to be able to trust, placing his body weight in your neck, slowly asphyxiating you against hot asphalt while he asks you if you're still a tough guy. I hope this officer, Danny officer who allowed this to happen, is tried and convicted. It's going to be some time before I can polish my badge back to ashine. In the meantime, a family is suffering, a community is burning, all because of one guy who should have never been an officer. What do I think? I think assholes like this make my job that much harder and damage the trust one works so hard for. I think assholes like this ruin people's lives and ruin families. I think assholes like these should be stuck in a prison with all of the people they ever arrested. For all the police officers here, what would the charges be? iPhone of the bystanders pulled the police officer off of the poor guy. Wow, thanks for gold. For all the police officers here, what would the charges be? iPhone of the bystanders pulled the police officer off of the poor guy. Wow, thanks for gold. I'm a former police officer, and so have had plenty of training in physical restraint of individuals being arrested. There is no police academy training officers to kneel on someone's neck to subdue them. That's how you kill a person. There is extensive training on how to avoid seriously injuring a person while restraining them, and I guarantee you every one of these officers was trained to never strike a person in the neck or choke them. The officer who killed him is very clearly liable for manslaughter at the very least, and I think the other officers who stood by have some accountability as well, because they knew damn well that was not how you handle a person, and should have stepped up. Absolutely sick to my stomach. I'm a lieutenant in my hometown police department. I started my day by showing the video to my officers and making sure my people understood that this is murder, plain and simple. You never, outside of a life and death struggle, do anything like this. George Floyd was handcuffed and on the ground. If he was still struggling badly enough that they felt a need to hold him down, there's 100 ways to do it safely. Use of force should always be as measured and considered as possible. There will always be times where an officer sees danger and has to make a split-second decision without the luxury of weighing the consequences. That clearly was not the case here. He had all the time in the world to think about what he was doing. He had multiple people there telling him to stop. And none of his fellow officers intervened. All of that is why I find this incident particularly disgusting. They had so many chances to do the right thing. Luckily, I have not a local, am a Fed. 5 years into the job. George Floyd was murdered and it's ducking disgusting. We're trained that anything involving the neck is a no-go and is considered deadly force. We were also trained that if you make an arrest in a prone position, you search and then immediately move them onto their side or a seated position because the risk of asphyxiation is so great. If a suspect says they can't breathe, believe them and take measures to correct to it. This training is reinforced at least twice a year in our use of force training. These officers deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison. Retired after 28 years. Nothing less than murder. All the guys I worked with would never have considered doing something like that. You treat combative in custodies once they're secured as human beings. Nothing should be personal. Once they've been subdued and you are safe as an officer, you stand him up, pat him down and understand that your arrestee is at a low point in his life. Give him some dignity and you'll generally get his respect. It works 90+% of the time. That man was subdued and nobody should have been on him at that point. I'm a police officer in California. I am absolutely disgusted by the officers' actions. When someone is in our custody, you must treat them properly. I don't care if they are arrested for murder or forgery. They are a human with a story and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I had tears streaming down my face watching the video of George Floyd. We swore to protect our communities and that's what we set out to do every day. Putting a knee into the neck of a handcuffed man for an extended period of time isn't protecting. A man has lost his life due to the gross negligence of an evil person. May he rest in peace. Deleted. Cop here. Disgusted. There are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't have happened. Simple, easy, steps that should have been taken. Lessons that policing has learned over the past 200 years and basic things taught in every academy. Make no mistake, this was murder. Maybe not premeditated murder, but nonetheless murder. I will be angry if those officers do not get indicted. I was a cop in the military. In the police academy, this was one of the things that taught us not to do, as it could crush the windpipe. The only time I was ever taught to use chokes and neck holds was in combat training for deployments. But when we got back, we always had to attend retraining classes to relearn what we can do stateside. Didn't the same happen in New York a few years ago with Eric Garner being put in a chokehold? Didn't the same happen in New York a few years ago with Eric Garner being put in a chokehold? Sheriff's deputy here, and I must say that I am disgusted by the unnecessary loss of life. There are moments that make me regret what I do, and this is one of them. I've met my share of racists wearing a badge and I'm ready for a career change. The oath we take is to uphold the law and constitution, so for the officers seen there that could have stepped in and prevented this, duck you. One bad apple always ruins the bunch, unfortunately. I pray for the George's family and that justice is served. Throw away for obvious reasons, and yes, I'm a white male. Edit wasn't expecting this to blow up as it has. I'm responding to you guys when I can, and I'm glad we can have a conversation about this. We do not unionize in my state for law enforcement, and I see many comments about systemic protection and abuse. I have never worked under a police union, but I have worked with people who were unionized, and I have heard my share of stories where lays protected by the union. Stories I hear are: I am a police officer in the UK. I always find these things so hard to watch. Your natural instinct is to want to find a way to justify the actions of a fellow officer, but I'm finding more and more often that is becoming impossible. This video is one of the absolute worst things I've ever seen, and there is no justifiable reason for it to have happened. George Floyd was murdered, and that is the bottom line. Nobody is above the law, and putting on a uniform does not mean you should be allowed special dispensation to behave like an animal. Positional asphyxia and the risks are drummed from day one of training. As soon as someone is restrained, you have to have them in a position where they can breathe freely. To have someone screaming they can't breathe and to have them pinned down by the neck whilst they slowly die knowing all this and doing nothing to help, not only is that murder but I would say that is torture and the sheer fear George Floyd must have felt in the moments before he popped. The shooting of Jean Charles de Menezes to see that but I cannot understand how regularly law enforcement in the US are shown to abusing excess force against people of color. And fundamentally it's an issue of institutional racism. And when the bare bones of institution are steeped in racism, how do you ever combat it? Finally, I want to say, my heart goes out to the family of George Floyd and to the community he is part of. It's devastating that this has happened to you and I hope you get the justice you deserve. As a son of a former police officer, my dad worked really hard to be an honest cop. His department was full of racists. They didn't like him because he was a decent cop, they couldn't do anything wrong on front of him. We saw the news together and I saw him wipe a tear, but tried really hard to hide it. I know we sad and I don't want to push him to talk about it, but we both know things like this is always gonna happen, and that is a really sad fact. I can't possibly understand why a human being would do something like this. I work for a US federal bureau but am not a local police officer. All 4 cops need to go to jail. Derek Chauvin, the cop with the knee on George's neck, should have gone to jail long ago. The guy apparently has a history of doing this. This is his 3rd time in 15 years. Black people need to keep fighting and white/Asian/Latino people need to support them. Justice for cases like this won't come easy, and it won't come soon. But if they keep fighting, I truly believe that one day, eventually, it will come. I used to be a police officer. It was ducking embarrassing going out the day after something like this happened. One of the reason I quit was because I had no pride in my job anymore for the people doubting if I used to be a cop or not. This is the only proof I really have. In order to get the police officer flaren/r/protect and serve you need to send the mods a pic of your police issued ID. Haven't been to that sub since before I quit but here it is imager.com/a/duck2knob. I used to be a police officer. It was ducking embarrassing going out the day after something like this happened. One of the reason I quit was because I had no pride in my job anymore for the people doubting if I used to be a cop or not. This is the only proof I really have. In order to get the police officer flaren/r/protect and serve you need to send the mods a pic of your police issued ID. Haven't been to that sub since before I quit but here it is imager.com/a/duck2knob. Retired. It disgusts me as the job is difficult enough as it is working mostly in sensitive neighborhoods. Brutality like this makes it far more difficult. Serious question to the police officers participating in this discussion. Obviously there are a myriad of factors that possibly contributed to this incident, from poor training, to an officer being unfit for duty, etc. My question is, how is it possible that the 3 other officers on the scene took no steps to intervene, or at the very least, check on the status of the victim? Is there any reason for their lack of awareness or decision to stand aside while they, along with many other bystanders, can clearly see the man dying in front of them? What justification, if any, is possible in this situation? Serious question to the police officers participating in this discussion. Obviously there are a myriad of factors that possibly contributed to this incident, from poor training, to an officer being unfit for duty, etc. My question is, how is it possible that the 3 other officers on the scene took no steps to intervene, or at the very least, check on the status of the victim? Is there any reason for their lack of awareness or decision to stand aside while they, along with many other bystanders, can clearly see the man dying in front of them? What justification, if any, is possible in this situation? Since we're tapping into the police community here, can someone please explain what, if anything, the bystanders could have done to help George Floyd? Call 911 and report police brutality. In all seriousness, what is the preventative action here since none of the police officers on the scene, 4 of which were physically restraining him, reacted to his being murdered right in front of them? Edit. Thank you u/murder by modem for this link. ACLU, www.aclu.org/issues/criminal-law-police/reforming-police/record-police-conduct. I'm adding it to my post because I think others will appreciate it and I don't want it to get lost. Edit. In summary, some of the options proposed are a bellow. I apologize if I omitted, misrepresented, or oversimplified anything. The bystanders in this case did many oft these things, and they were a voice for George when he couldn't speak for himself. 1. Always record the incident, live streaming if possible, and inform the police they are being wrecker. Result in physical, potentially fatal, and legal ramifications for the individual involved unless the group of bystanders are organized enough and outnumber the officers on the scene to the extent that they can safely take control without further harm. 6. Systemic change, vote, local and national, for people that value human life and will implement change to protect it. This is not an anti-gun sentiment. If you value your right to carry a gun, then vote for people that support that. Be vocal in demanding justice when these incidents occur. Push for improved training, hiring practices, and accountability within the police force. I would imagine that this may also include increasing pay for the police force to attract more suitable individuals in tough positions. Possibly implement a citizen-based governing body to oversee the police force and their actions. Hey, you made it to the end, nice job. Remember to like and subscribe, it's free and you can unsub whenever you want.